Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frog. This is my face reveal. Hello. Today's video, I'm going to be doing a Catholic icon video where I mold a crucifix. I'm also going to be showcasing this new microphone I got from Safring, specifically the professional condenser microphone right here. This microphone. It came with a little soundboard, that's pretty neat, so let's showcase what Safring can do. All right, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to receive notifications and share with your friends to help this channel expand. And on to the video. When we look upon a crucifix, we see more than a religious decoration or symbol. We see a story, one that stretches across 2,000 years of faith, suffering, redemption, and devotion. The crucifix is among the most recognizable images in the world, yet its meaning runs deeper than many realize. It represents sacrifice, victory over death, and the central mystery of Christianity. At the heart of the crucifix is the person of Jesus Christ, whose crucifixion stands at the center of Christian belief. Christians believe that through his death on the cross and his resurrection, humanity was reconciled to God. But the story of how the crucifix became a central icon in Christian life is a long and fascinating one. To understand the crucifixion, we must first understand the cross itself. In the ancient Roman world, crucifixion was a brutal form of execution. The Roman Empire used it primarily for slaves, rebels, and criminals. It was meant to be humiliating, painful, and public. Victims could suffer for hours, even days before dying. Because of this, the cross was originally seen as a symbol of shame and terror. For the earliest Christians, this created a difficult tension. The very instrument used to execute their Lord was something society associated with disgrace. Because of this, early Christians were often cautious about depicting the crucifix directly. Instead, early Christian art used symbolic imagery. In the Roman catacombs, where many early believers buried their dead and sometimes worshipped in secret, archaeologists have discovered images of fish, anchors, shepherds, and the Chi-Rho symbol. These symbols hinted at Christ and salvation without directly showing the cross. One of the most common images was Christ as the Good Shepherd, carrying sheep upon his shoulders. The early church emphasized his victory and mercy rather than the suffering of the crucifixion itself. This began to change in the 4th century. In the year 313, a dramatic shift occurred. With the Edict of Milan, issued by the Roman emperors Constantine the Great and Lysianus, this decree legalized Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. Suddenly, Christians could worship openly, build churches, and create sacred art. Around this time, tradition tells us that Constantine's mother, Saint Helena, traveled to Jerusalem in search of the physical cross on which Christ had died. According to ancient Christian sources, she discovered the relic known as the true cross. Whether understood historically or devotionally, the story had enormous influence. Relics of the cross spread throughout the Christian world, and the cross itself began to appear prominently in churches and Christian art. At first, these crosses were usually empty. They symbolized Christ's triumph over death. Rather than emphasizing suffering, they emphasized resurrection and victory. But over the centuries, Christians increasingly reflect on the suffering of Christ and the meaning of his sacrifice. By the early Middle Ages, artists began to portray Christ on the cross. These early crucifixions often depicted him as a serene majestic and wearing royal garments, and standing upright even while nailed to the cross. The emphasis remained on his divine authority. One of the great influences on devotion to the crucified Christ came through the saints and mystics who meditated deeply on his passion. Among the most influential was Saint Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscan order in the 13th century. Francis had a deep devotion to the suffering Christ. Tradition tells us that while praying at the crucifix at the church of San Damiano, he heard Christ speak to him, saying, "Francis, rebuild my church." This moment became foundational to Franciscan spirituality, and devotion to the crucifix spread wildly through Franciscan preaching and art. Another famous crucifix associated with St. Francis is the San Damiano crucifix, an icon that shows Christ surrounded by figures from the Gospel. The style reflects ancient Byzantine iconography while emphasizing the theological meaning of the crucifixion. During the medieval period, crucifixes gradually became more realistic. Artists began portraying Christ's suffering in greater detail: his bowed head, wounded side, and crown of thorns. This shift was not meant to glorify pain, but to remind believers of the immense love shown in Christ's sacrifice. Theologians also reflect deeply on the meaning of the crucifixion. One of the greatest among them was St. Thomas Aquinas, the 13th century Dominican theologian. Aquinas taught that the cross reveals both the justice and the mercy of God. On the cross, Christ freely offers himself for humanity, showing the depth of divine love. Aquinas famously wrote that the Passion of Christ is the greatest example of virtue because it reveals obedience, humility, patience, and charity. By the late Middle Ages, crucifixes had become central features of churches throughout Europe. Large crucifixes hung above altars, reminding the faithful that Mass makes present the sacrifice of Christ. This connection between the crucifix and the Mass became especially important in Catholic theology. The Catholic Church teaches that the sacrifice of Christ on the cross and the sacrifice of the Mass are one and the same mystery, made present sacramentally. The crucifix above the altar serves as a visual reminder of that sacrifice. In the 16th century, the role of sacred images, including the crucifix, became a point of debate during the Protestant Reformation. Some reformers rejected religious images entirely, believing they could lead to idolatry. In response, the Catholic Church addressed this issue at the Council of Trent, which met between 1545 and 1563. The council affirmed the proper use of sacred images. It taught that the images such as crucifixes help instruct the faithful and inspire devotion. The honor shown to an image does not stop at the image itself, but passes to the person it represents. In other words, when Christians kneel before a crucifix, they are not worshiping wood or metal, they are honoring the sacrifice of Christ. Over the centuries, the crucifix became not only a church ornament, but also a deeply personal object of devotion. Many Catholic homes display crucifixes. They are placed in bedrooms, living rooms, and even workplaces. The crucifix reminds believers that Christ is present in every part of life, especially in suffering. In monasteries and religious communities, crucifixes are often central to daily prayer. Monks and nuns meditate on the Passion of Christ as they seek to unite their own struggles with his sacrifice. The crucifix also plays a role in many Catholic devotions. One of the most well known is the Stations of the Cross, a series of meditations on the events of Christ's Passion. These stations appear in churches throughout the world and invite believers to walk spiritually alongside Christ on his journey to Calvary. The crucifix is also present during important moments of life and death. Priests often hold a crucifix before the dying so that their final gaze rests upon Christ. One famous example is Saint Padre Pio, the 20th century Capuchin friar, known for his deep devotion to the Passion of Christ. He often encouraged believers to meditate on the crucifix, saying that it reveals the measure of God's love. Even today, the crucifix continues to inspire artists, craftsmen, and believers. Crucifixes can be made from many materials: wood, stone, gold, silver, iron, or even simple recycled metal. Regardless of the material, the meaning remains the same. Each crucifix points back to the same moment in history, the death of Christ on Calvary, and the love revealed there. When Christians look upon a crucifix, they see not only suffering, but also hope. The cross was meant to destroy and humiliate, yet through Christ it became a sign of redemption. What was once an instrument of death became a symbol of life. For nearly 2,000 years, the crucifix has reminded believers of a powerful truth: that love is stronger than death, that sacrifice can transform the world, and that even the darkest moment in history became a doorway to salvation. And so, when we see a crucifix, whether carved from wood, cast from metal, or formed from something as humble as melted aluminum, we are reminded that even ordinary things can be transformed, just as the cross itself was transformed. From a tool of execution into a sign of redemption, so too can the materials of everyday life be reshaped into something sacred. The crucifix tells the story of suffering, but even more, it tells the story of love. And that story continues to be told in churches, homes, works of art, and acts of faith throughout the world. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and remember to fully rely on God. and I'll see you next time.